I'm recording right now. I don't play around. I love catching people off base. Look what I got behind me for you, though.
What? I know, it's so beautiful.
This is San Diego. It's a picture I took. I know you live Southern Cal. Anyways, I used to use regular backdrops. I'm exhausted from using them all over the house, including outside.
You know what? The thing I don't like about the backgrounds is if you forget and you lean back, you disappear.
I'm sick of my house backdrops, backyard backdrops, but wait a minute. I have other ones for you, my dear, because I know you love beaches.
I do.
So I have Santa Monica if you want. These are my own photos. I have Miami, South Beach. I got downtown LA if you want. I got Beverly Hills. What do you want?
I'm all about the San Diego beach. That's good.
You want this one?
Yeah.
I got them all. I got Daytona. I got them all for you. I got Malibu for you.
Oh, I'll take that too.
There's LA for you. Here, let's zoom in and out. There's your South Beach. I thought a cool one with you. I was going to use this originally, and I said, no, she loves beach. Oh, here's Naples I took.
Oh, I've never been to Naples.
Oh, it's beautiful, my dear. Here, I'm going to show you the one that I originally picked for you. This one I took actually at Burberry in Beverly Hills. You like that look there?
It's so pretty. It's just so funny because I'm so not a Beverly Hills.
I'm going back to the beach.
I know. I'm probably the only girl you know that grew up in Calabasas that does what I do that is so not into that.
I know. You're not, unbelievable. Yeah. All right, let's get into this Betty A Monroe. Can I ask you a question though real quick?
Of course.
Do you do the A in the middle because of Betty Monroe, the other, a Mexican actress?
Oh my
Betty
God.
Monroe.
Well, okay, there's a really funny story behind that. I don't. My middle name is Anne, but I've always done Betty A Monroe. However, I discovered Betty Monroe, the Mexican actress, who is not always so appropriate because when I was on my Nickelodeon series, I was getting a lot of fans quickly, and I guess Latino people somehow thought that my then professional Facebook page as an actress, which I've since taken down, was hers. And so every time they did an article or an expose on Betty Monroe from Mexico, tag me. It's like one day it got so annoying that I actually did a side-by-side of my headshot and her head. We don't look anything alike except for the hair. Yes. And I was like, this is not, in Spanish, I said, I'm so flattered. This is not me. You have the wrong actress. And it kept happening.
Yeah, that's crazy. And I keep waiting for her to pop up on like Narcos or somewhere, and she hasn't, because I kind of know a little bit about her. But
I think she's more of like a telenovela actress, like kind of cheesy, so
whatever. So I always want to ask you that. And what's interesting is when I said I'm going to do a podcast, everyone kept saying to me, Rich, all you're going to have on there is writers, directors, producers, and actors and actresses. And you're my first actress. I says, no, I'm actually not going to do that because I wanted to find people that I was interested in talking to, regardless if they were from LA, New York, Chicago, or wherever, Italy. I just wanted to find interesting people that I thought I had a chemistry with as well, that we can have some fun. And obviously me and you go back and forth. We are always busting each other's chops. So what's interesting about you that I always loved is your backstory, like how you grew up in California, but now we're both in Florida. But let's kind of start from the beginning of, I think it was your grandfather, correct? And, it starts with that I remember. So kind of give people an idea, you're an actress and you've been doing this for a majority of your life, right? Anybody?
Well, that's the funny part. So I started as a young kid as like a live, theater type actress. And my grandfather always discouraged me from it. I actually wound up going to college and becoming a teacher and having a family. I did not really pursue the profession hardcore until I was 37 years old.
That's right. But you acted as a kid because that was kind of the industry you were kind of born into. And this is starting off in Los Angeles or in that area.
Yeah. But I was more of a musical theater kid.
Right.
I was not really interested in being on TV or in movies. At around 19, I kind of dabbled in it a little. And even before that, at 16, I was a featured extra on the set of, I can say it now, but on the set of The Adventures of Ford Fairlane with Andrew Dice Clay. Yeah. My girlfriend Sheila had been an actor in town, and she forged a birth certificate and got me on a SAG set. And it was really interesting. But my favorite story from that was at 16, I got goosed by Morris Day on the set.
I love Morris Day.
Freaked out, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. But at 19, I did a pilot for a children's TV series, and then I just kind of decided, you know what, I want to be a teacher. And I was a teacher in Jewish education for a long time. Met my former husband, got married, had kids, and never even really thought about it. Because I was married to someone who didn't support it or believe in it, and had always been told it's not great. And I had seen a lot of the negativity.
Sure.
Because it's not all hearts and roses. It's a difficult profession.
Yeah, I remember. What projects was your grandfather involved with? And he was in the studio, right? He was in Burbank, right?
My grandpa, Sam Rosen, was an amazing man. He was a cameraman and cinematographer and a still photographer for both Columbia and Paramount Studios for 50 plus years.
Yeah.
He started at Columbia in the very early days and did all the spaghetti westerns and that kind of stuff. And then he and Grandma moved from New York to Los Angeles, to the home that I grew up, visiting and sleeping over at and all that in Central Hollywood on Courtney Avenue. Yeah. We lived there 40 years, I think, till they passed. And he was with Paramount for the entire majority of his career. He was very close to Garry Marshall and did several projects with Garry. I grew up visiting the set of Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley, mostly Happy Days. But he did, I think, 7 out of the 10 years of Happy Days before he retired, maybe 6 or 7. He did Laverne and Shirley. He did Mork and Mindy. He did The Odd Couple. Was one of the earlier series that he did, the whole deal.
I just saw that yesterday. I watched the whole Garry Marshall special because I love him so much.
You know what? I need to watch it because I'm wondering, in an older special, they featured Grandpa. You could see him when they honored Garry. They did like a Happy Days special years ago, and you could see my grandfather on set, so that was fun.
You're going to love this. It basically went through the whole life of Garry Marshall, starting from the beginning. I mean, literally him going to even Northwestern University, because I knew that, I'm from Chicago, and then him then going to Hollywood. But it's amazing. They go through each series, how they kind of developed it. And if you're a filmmaker or you know anything about him, you'll know already kind of the route he took. But to actually see it again, and then they brought back a lot of actors and actresses and other people that worked with him even after he passed. So yeah, that's amazing. So, and anybody else in your family? So you had your grandfather, but what about your parents? They didn't get involved with that.
It's funny because my family has a lot of peripheral involvement. So my mom was a child actress. She did some films with Burt Lancaster when she was very young, and she was a dancer and a model, but didn't want to pursue it. Got married young and had my sister, and she was married once before my father, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. She was kind of the rebel kid. And my uncle didn't want anything to do with it. He went into publishing. But my dad was always a very funny, engaging guy. He was an attorney, but he did great voices, and he was just funny and introduced me to the world of stand-up comedy. But he never really performed. However, my paternal grandfather was a furrier, because back when it was cool to wear fur and it was acceptable, right? Sure. In Hollywood, mink coats and the like. But one of my favorite stories is that grandpa, so my paternal grandpa Bill, was asked to create all of the tribbles for the episode of Star Trek where the tribbles attack the little fuzzballs. He made all of them. And this is the worst. When he passed away, I was never a Star Trek fan, never watched it, didn't like it.
Okay.
And when my grandfather passed away, I was in my mid-20s, and I cleaned out his apartment. We lived in West Hollywood at the time. And there was a huge trash bag full of them. I frickin' threw it away.
Oh my goodness.
No idea what. He used to make them for me, keychains with like the bright colored faux fur, and I'd hang them off my backpack or my lunchbox. And I'm like, what are we going to do with these? And I threw the whole damn bag away.
You want to hear a funny story? My cousin, who's one of the top editors in Chicago, he started with Siskel and Ebert in the 70s on public television. And then when they moved on to WGN, and then obviously I think they ended up on NBC, he was editing all their shows for like literally decades. But he had the original 2 seats they sat in for the original show. Nobody wanted them. He took them home. His kids he just put it in front of his basement television, and everybody used to just sit in them because they were like, old movie theater.
Wait, are you talking about Lewis?
What'd you say?
Your cousin Lewis?
My cousin Charlie. Did I say Lewis?
Oh, no, but I was.
Oh, my cousin Charlie. No, my cousin Charlie's an editor. He's one of the top editors in Chicago. He's been doing it forever. But over the years, his kids and everybody going down there destroyed him. And then eventually, this goes way back, he ended up throwing him out. They didn't, and now they would be in like the Smithsonian. He's like so broken. He's like, but you don't care back, after 10 years or whatever. You're like, this is the late 70s, literally when that show started, and then take the late 80s. No one's thinking the way they're thinking now with certain things. And he's like, oh, it's only 2 seats. Now we talk about it. I did a podcast with him. It sounds similar to like what you have, something that somebody would really want to have, right? A collector, hypothetically. So
no, I'm really the only one, other than my first cousin Sabrina, who is a costumer. She's a costume designer. So she did wardrobe for 6 Feet Under. She does a lot, and she's still working currently. She's in her early 60s, and she still works in LA.
Well, that's awesome. So let's go. It's funny you said Dice Clay, because my father used to own a nightclub, and I used to go book talent with comedians at 10, 11, 12 years old, which sounds crazy now. And then me and my father loved comedians. We watched the Rodney Dangerfield. He had a special once, and Dice was on there, and we loved him. I think anybody who really was Italian or Jewish fell in love with him, or New York, Chicago. And then I used to go watch him in Park Avenue in Orlando. There wasn't many comedy clubs back then. That was really the only one. And there might have been the Why Not Lounge at the Holiday Inn in 430.
Yes.
Let me be wrong. They used to have open mic night. But I used to go see Dice Clay in his infancy when he really was just small shows. He was always such a polite man. And you'd see him there, and he was kind of very reserved. And he was so nice. And then when you'd see him go perform, I used to honestly say, this guy's really great besides just this stand-up. And then after you see his...
And he's a talented actor as well. The
he
stuff
is.
He's done recently has been great.
But like in a few years, he went from, I'm watching him in these small venues, maybe 100 people, maybe less, 50. Then fast forward a few years later, he was coming out with Ford Fairlane, and then he did that monster tour, and he was at the arena. So all of a sudden it went from one extreme of him in a short amount of time, maybe 5-7 years, to becoming the biggest comedian in the world, basically at that point in time, which was crazy to see that growth. So I threw my own 2 cents in there. Let's get back to you. Let's go from you going from so Ford Fairlane, you get married. I love Morris Day. He's one of my favorite dressers.
Oh God, I'll never forget.
So I used to see Prince, and I discussed this before.
Me Too moment. Jerk.
Well, that's hilarious. I used to see Prince when he used to be at the Tupperware Center over there on OBT with fold-out chairs before he exploded too. So my father loved Prince, so did I. I'm talking the early 80s. He only had like 1999 out. And it's kind of interesting, but I seen Morris Day perform many times because he was a drummer. My father's a professional drummer. And he loves drumming. My dad's crazy, and we love drummers. And Morris Day, not a lot of people know this, but he was a drummer, and he's really good. Wow. And I've heard things where like Prince kind of a lot of things not stole from him, but it kind of emulated certain things Morris Day did because they go all the way back to high school, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was 16. What do I know?
So did you get turned off because he did that to you?
No.
Okay. I was going to say, and then you didn't like the industry after that? Or?
It's like, look, it goes back to, I hate to use the term personal development, but you think about most people do what they are taught they should do and what is societally acceptable to do. And when you have the people that are closest to you and you're too young to know that it's toxic, saying, whether it's out of their own fear or their own jealousy of their inability to follow their own dreams or being squished down by their own parents, oh, you need to have a backup, or you need to have a fallback, or that's not a good choice, or you need to be, it's like the old joke. One of my favorite comics is Joe Coy.
Yeah,
and he happens to be Filipino-American, and he's so funny.
Yes.
But what I love is one of the things he talks about is how it's the Filipino thing that Filipino moms push their kids to be nurses or mailmen. It's like a cultural thing. Mm-hmm. And, I grew up in Calabasas, freaking California, as a Jewish woman. Well, I had to marry a doctor, or I had to become a lawyer or a doctor, or something of societal status. Okay.
It's a programming mechanism. They're programming.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I became a teacher. That's, what I did. That was considered acceptable. Mm-hmm. Now, I did have a passion for teaching, and I still do. However, I recently retired from the academic classroom, and that's a whole other ball of wax. But in any event, I was too scared. I allowed fear. Okay. I allowed the fear to, instead of making it a fuel, it became the fire that burned out my desire for a long time. And when I finally, at 37 years old, had the courage to do the hardest thing I'd ever done, which was leave my marriage with 3 young children, mm-hmm. I think that was the beginning of my ability to start giving zero, can I say the F word, Fox?
Yeah.
It was the beginning of that ability, and it took some time. But I had briefly, once single, dated someone who was at the time a working actor in this area before we lost our tax incentives and media incentives in Florida, and there was still quite a bit of production here. And he and some friends pushed me. They heard my background, and they said, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I'd been a stay-home mom, and I didn't want to teach full-time. And they said, Betty, you need to submit to our agent. And I said, you're crazy. I haven't done anything in years. Are you insane? Sure. And they pushed me in a very positive way. And that's kind of how it started again. I booked the first commercial out. I had a resume, and I printed it and got headshots done. And it's kind of just for the last 9 years been fairly consistent. So I've been really lucky.
But don't you, sometimes I look at teachers as performers, right? You have an audience. It may be the same audience, but depending on what type of school you're in, you may have a different audience every day, different classes, depending on what you teach as well. I used to say that about religious figures. I don't care if it's a priest. I don't care if it's a preacher of any sort. I used to say, you have to realize you're kind of performing. And if you can't perform correctly, regardless what your message is, most likely you're not going to reach the people you're trying to reach. Do you think, like
it's not a correct thing. I think we're storytellers, right?
Exactly.
As actors, we're storytellers. As teachers, we're storytellers, but we're also people who need to create a trust bond. And I think, this goes for so many things, and people have to change their perspective. Currently, I produce a podcast for my boyfriend's company, and he is a sales professional. So the things that I use as an artist, the tools I have in my artist toolbox as an actress and as a performer, are things that I can impart to sellers, teachers, speakers, because it's about building a trust. It's about living truthfully in not always an imaginary circumstance. As an actor, yes, it's in an imaginary circumstance. But for a seller, it's living truthfully in an imagined circumstance or a desired circumstance, i.e., if you haven't made that sale yet, do what you need to do to envision it happening in your desired outcome rather than an imaginary circumstance. And as a teacher, I need to build the trust of a young child to truly take what I have to say as important, but truthful, that I'm leading them down a path of learning through doing, experiencing, feeling, seeing, touching, rather than just speaking at somebody. It's having a conversation with somebody.
Yeah, I have some close friends that are teachers, even my cousins, my first cousins even. We have a massive family, so I have a lot of people in there. I even have friends that are principals. And, they always talk about how rewarding it is to help others, being a teacher, having students and doing everything. But I also see a lot of times it being very frustrating as well on a lot of you, right? Not only from a financial point of view, but just dealing with a lot of different personalities, depending on where you're working, who you have to work for, all those type of things. Does that kind of sum it up to a certain degree?
I think this is how I look at it in pertinence to myself, and I'm sure there's some people who can relate. I've been blessed to make a living pursuing 3 things I was passionate about, and I've been very blessed to have 3 things to be passionate about. Am I still passionate about all 3 of those things? No, and that's the sad part. Teaching to me has taken a different context. This last October, after being a long-term substitute in public elementary schools in the Seminole County system for over a decade, I retired and left altogether. I couldn't wrap my arms around. I had been so passionate about horses, teaching young children, and the performing arts. And throughout my adult life, I've had the luxury of making a living at all 3 of those things in various capacities. The horses have since fallen by the wayside due to a severe injury, which is no fault of my own, but I still have a passion for it. However, I use it differently. The arts will always be a passion of mine in variant forms, not just one thing. But teaching, I love teaching in an art form now. I still do work with young kids on camera. I tape kids professionally and that kind of thing. And I still even work with some adults that are exploring that artistic side of themselves. But teaching as far as academically has changed so drastically. And at one time, something for which I had such a strong passion, I now have a disdain and frustration for, simply because we need to, and this is a whole nother podcast, but we need to get back to the days of Fred Rogers and what has happened to the world as a whole, what technology has sadly done to young people's, and even people our own ages, abilities to form communicative relationships that are tangible and connective.
For sure.
It's heartbreaking.
It's hard on you guys. Yeah.
It's also, parenting has changed. The way children are expected to behave has changed. The way children behave has changed. And it's a sad thing. I do miss it, but I had to do what was best for my emotional health, because it was something that was taking away more than it was feeding me.
Yeah. So let's get back into the acting thing now. So you decide to be an actress or get back into the arts professionally, I guess.
Yeah.
You weren't teaching, real quick, you weren't teaching the arts in school, were you? No, you were. What were you teaching?
No. I was actually a classroom teacher.
What were you teaching?
I was teaching K through 5. I was a long-term substitute teacher. So I was originally an early childhood professional, and I worked with children with various special needs, kids on the autistic spectrum, kids who had different physical disabilities.
That's amazing.
Lots of different things. And that was kind of my thing. And the long-term substitute teaching came in really, really handy when I decided to pursue the industry again, because it gave me the flexibility.
Sure.
That I did.
When you decided to start going back into acting, were you taking any classes? So let's put it this way. You're in Orlando, Florida. You're not in LA. So to make that clear with people. And this is before, when you started to come back in the game, Georgia was just starting to do a big climb, I think, as far as the industry goes.
It hadn't even hit yet.
Right, it didn't even hit.
Yet.
Okay. So let's start with Florida. So when you decided to come back, were you taking any lessons? What were you going to SAC, which is another organization?
No, actually, that's something I have that's on my bucket list, is to do SAC, just to do it.
Okay.
But there's a really beautiful little school here called Artsake Studios that my dear friend Yvonne Suhor, who's passed on, owned and operated, and she started it. I'm not sure what year she began the school, but the friends that I spoke of earlier who encouraged me to re-enter the industry were the ones that told me about it. They were all students of hers, and I fell in love with it. And I studied with her for about 1.5 years, 2 years. And then I briefly took classes for just a couple months at Class Act Studios, which is another really good studio in town. There are a few, but the last several years, my professional work I have teachers in Atlanta and LA. So I coach privately or travel there for workshop type situations.
Yeah, and if anybody knows you, you're in a lot of commercials, even locally, right?
Yeah, that's been the bulk of my work.
Yeah.
I think a common misconception is that everybody who wants to be an actor wants to be a star. And that
Right.
is not my desire. My desire is to make a living doing what I love and doing something that comes from here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my first love as far as performing is doing film. TV's fun, but it's very fast paced and can be really stressful. It's all fun. I've done everything. I've been blessed to do everything from voiceover work to, radio spots to even doing like an audiobook. I've done many audiobook types of things. It's been a lot of fun. But it kind of is one of those things that I take as it comes.
Yeah.
I have a family, so I can't fully immerse myself the way I'd like to, but I'm a year away from being an empty nester to where I can really pursue it hard. When I'm not the only, when I don't have to worry about everybody else.
I found it so interesting when I met you because a lot of people, as you know, they talk about the industry and the younger you are, the better off you are, all them type of, I guess you could say cliches. In your case, you were coming in when a lot of people would, at your age, nothing against you, are getting out, right?
I don't think that's the case anymore.
I don't either. That was my point. Wouldn't you say like now more than ever? I think your timing was pretty amazing because I think the talent is what they're looking at more than ever now.
The beautiful thing about being an actress is that there's not, or an actor, there is no age limit. There are roles for everybody. Hold for a second. Teeny.
Yeah, go ahead.
Roles for everybody. And you look at Betty White. She's 98 years old and she's about to star in a TV movie again.
Sure.
So there's really it's about what's available, what's being written, and who they need. And the nice thing is, I do look a lot younger than I am. That's a beautiful thing. I won't always. Right. I'll ride it as long as I got it. So, even though I'm closer to 50, I still book 30s. So, but that won't last forever. Right. And when it changes, I'll change with it. I can't, it's got to be a roll with the punches thing. And you have to have the skin of an elephant, because if you don't, and if you can't take the rejection and the no's, then this is not for you. I mean, I'm really proud of the accomplishments I've made, and I'm not a movie star. That's not my goal. But, I had a season regular role on an internationally viewed TV series that still streams on Hulu. I did 13 episodes. I've done probably 100 commercials of different lengths, sizes, shapes for all kinds of different things. A couple of national spots. And oddly enough, none of my work has been union because we live in a right to work state.
It's crazy.
And 90% of what comes through here is all non-union, but it's still work, and it's still something that so many people wish to aspire to, and that I can say, gosh, you know what, I did that.
Absolutely. Does anybody ever actually misplace you for a model? Because when I first met you, I said this girl had to be a model in her past just because of your height, your look, your hair, the way you kind of carry yourself. Do you ever get any of that? Just
seriously, I actually do. I do a lot of print work, and I still do. Right. Especially several years ago. But I still do print. I mean, look, that's the beautiful thing about this industry is there are so many opportunities and so many ways you can work. Sure. It doesn't have to be a one-trick wonder. You don't have to be, tunnel visioned towards one street, so to speak. You can fork off to the left, fork off to the right, and do all kinds of different things.
Did you ever consider, because we're in Orlando, doing something at, say, Universal Studios or even Disney, like part-time work there, becoming a cast member, any of that? Or are you strictly...
I did years ago. I actually auditioned for the live role of Belle many years ago when I first started in, because that's my thing is the musical theater. But
right.
Just even then I was like, I am just too old for this. To be outside.
No, I hear you loud and clear on that one. Yeah, right.
But, that's something more that like my son would aspire to. At that point, I had shifted my gears towards being more desirous of being in front of a camera rather than on stage. Although I still love that too.
Yeah, you're a fun person. I mean, you are very outgoing. I love that about you. And I had even the first time I met you, and through Nando, and when I'm in LA, I see Nando.
By the way.
What'd you say?
I spoke to him a few weeks ago.
Oh, I love him. I was watching the movie The Laundromat, and you can't escape my eye. I find him all over the place, and he laughs his ass off. So I'm watching a laundromat, and the guy stands up it's a far shot, and it's got Gary Oldman and Antonio Banderas in a bus, I'm pretty sure. And then he gets up and tells everybody to basically get off the bus, and I see him from a distance, and I go, there's Nando. So I immediately pick up the phone. I take a photo of it because we were watching it. And I said, are you trying to hide out from me? You know, like he's like, oh my God, one of the best days of my life. I did makeup with Gary Oldman. And who the hell doesn't know Gary Oldman? That's some of our favorite actors. And I am so proud of that dude because I remembered him in Orlando when he was literally, you know, we were meeting up at Starbucks, hanging out all the time. I used to tell him, dude, you're too talented. Get the hell out of here. And I lived in California then. And he used to always want to come, and I was always coming here. And then it was almost like he flew on a plane going there, and I flew back. And when I'm in LA, obviously I get to meet up with him, and I go back and forth with him. And he introduced us.
He did.
Yeah, he did. And I think I still go to that Starbucks all the time.
I think it was Barney's.
No, it was Starbucks across, the brand new Starbucks just opened in Winter Park Village. It just opened. Yeah, we were outside. I was with Nando. We were talking about a project. I had this project caught on film, and I wanted him to be a part of it. To make a long story short, that's when I ran into you. And at that time, I only had one. I just finished my book, The Model Bible or whatever, and we were discussing that. And then you told me about, your family and everything. And then we connected, and we've been friends ever since. It's very interesting how you just meet people randomly, right?
Yeah, well, the little red thread,
Yeah. So there's some other things I want to get through or talk to you about. So Georgia, I went to Georgia for a while, like 10 years ago, because it was supposed to be the up and coming thing. I had a close friend there, a mentor, Mark Simon, who owns Fizz City Productions, who's incredible. And I only lasted a month there. I dipped and went to San Diego. I couldn't take it anymore. I just didn't fit in the Georgia, I guess, pace, the dialect. The people were very nice to me. I don't know. It just didn't work for me. You are going back and forth, I think.
Yeah, I have been.
You have been going back and forth regarding projects.
Yeah, I love it there. I mean,
do you? Yeah.
Let me. I must say, I don't love the whole state, but where I've been blessed to be, which is the Midtown Buckhead.
Yeah, I love Buckhead. I love it there. Yeah.
Yeah, I prefer Midtown more. But
I mean, those two are the only spots, and the two malls, Lenox, Phipps, and then I'm done.
But the walkability, the public transit, and the culture, I really like it, and I really want to live there. I mean,
really,
I would prefer to live there as opposed to going home, to be very honest. I mean, Los Angeles was my home for 30 years.
I can see that for sure.
The LA now is not the LA I grew up in, not even remotely close to it. And it breaks my heart, but it could happen. It depends. I mean, but at this stage, I'm trying really hard to just kind of stay. My boyfriend and I have a saying, keep 1.5, every second we live, every moment we live lasts approximately 1.5 seconds. And so live it as it expires. Don't miss the moment. So that's something I really try to keep in my head, because as much as we want to look to the future, and in some ways we have to, I think with everything going on, and this is just proof in the pudding, what's happening right now, everything can come to a screeching halt like that. I mean, I've got a son who's a senior and who's actually heading off to your hometown to go to college as soon as it's safe to go. I'm blessed that he got accepted into the Roosevelt Chicago College of the Performing Arts as a musical theater Bachelor of Fine Arts. So, but you have to kind of keep everything in perspective and say, okay, let's live right now. And tomorrow is not guaranteed.
Yeah, I think I had a bad taste in my mouth regarding Georgia. It was personal because I was trying, after I did a couple feature films, and I did those in Chicago, and then I was here and I kind of co-produced a third film, and we were working on a slate of films, trying to raise funding. And this is even before I think Georgia really catapulted, and we were able to where we had a couple failures, but then eventually we got with some people that were possibly interested, and we went back and forth for like a year and a half. And at the very end, it didn't go through, and it was kind of heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
But I did notice that Georgia was going to be, I guess you'd call it the Hollywood of the South, because it was in Florida. I kind of seen, because living here even at 18 years old and on, Universal Studios, even opening the studios, they had Superboy, I think. They had maybe Swamp Thing. I may be screwing it up. I don't know if it was the heat or people back then not wanting to come here, but then we ended up even sharing an office with an entertainment lawyer that we had at Universal. But it didn't seem like, I don't know if it was because of tax reasons or whatever the case may be, nobody was really making films here.
The media incentives had a lot to do with it. I think it's been about 7 years now, maybe, that things really started to shift. But yeah, I mean, used to be that, like, I'm just throwing out stupid numbers, but you know, if you were going to do a $5 million production and you did it here, you'd get, whatever it is, 3% back. Okay.
Sure.
And
you get a certain percentage back,
yeah,
depending on tax incentives. Yeah.
Yeah, and what our local government decided was that was not important anymore, and they did away with the incentives completely, which was what caused a massive influx. Originally, it started in New Orleans and the Carolinas. So that's where everything kind of floated out to, but then they as well made major cuts and kind of forcing everything centrally to Atlanta. Nobody really knows exactly what happened. It's politics, but
Louisiana took on a big role too with that incentives. They really did really well with that. And like the reason I did Chicago films, Toronto was giving unbelievable incentives, or like just,
Toronto is great. Toronto has
it was a great place. And then Chicago said, listen, we'll do whatever you want to, we'll help you. We just want people to start making films here again. This is even before The Dark Knight or Clooney doing Oceans or any of that. Because I think the year I made a film, my second film, like 2002 or 3, the list was very minute compared to people making feature films there. Then you go back a couple of years after that, it was massive because of the incentives. So with you now, are you going to be able to survive in Orlando, you think, or you think you're going to officially have to move, depending? Because
if I want to succeed as an actor, I will have to relocate. But that's, like I said, I have a supplementary income within the industry. I'm producing a podcast. I'm doing a lot of voiceover work. I still get to be on camera for this job, which is a blessing. But it's not what I want to do all the time. I want to be performing. I want to be in a studio recording an audiobook. I want to be on camera. I want to be doing those things. And yes, in order to do that and actually make a living, it's not going to happen here anymore. As much as people would like for it to, and as easy as it would be for it to happen. We have great weather for it. We have really beautiful locations. But I mean, I can't tell you how many movies about Florida have been shot elsewhere in the last 7 years because of this, which is a shame.
Yeah, and if they do, I mean, you may have like Bad Boys or something maybe shooting there because that's kind of the whole atmosphere there. But I think even when they used to do CSI Miami, most of the exterior was LA for the most part. I mean, they would do some shooting, but it wasn't even with the actors, most likely. It would just be exterior shoots.
Yeah, and there's some things that are kind of trickling back in here, but it's just not enough. It's not enough to sustain anybody. The commercial market will always be big because there's always need for local commercials and local things like that, but there's very little union work that comes through our state now, which stinks. Even in Miami, Mrs. Maisel shot a season last year. That's about the biggest thing that's been in about 8 years, and that's it. I mean,
I once got in a big beef regarding the talent pool being here, especially actors and actresses. I'm like, it's not here. And somebody went bonkers on me. They said, yes, it is. There is a lot of talent here. I'm not saying there isn't talent here.
It's not anymore. Everybody who could has moved out. Now, look, there are still a handful of incredibly talented actors here.
Sure.
That I personally know. But the majority of the people who, some did have families, but most people who were younger didn't have kids, didn't have the ties, up and took off the minute it started exploding. And
they had to leave. They had to leave. Especially the way Georgia's exploding with everything. I mean, not only with Marvel, hypothetically, but it's also with Netflix and all different shows, even Jason Bateman getting involved in all these different...
I forget the percentage of Netflix series that are shooting in Atlanta right now, but it's some ridiculous number.
It's ridiculous. I
Many,
mean,
many. I mean, just personally, I've auditioned for Stranger Things, House of Cards,
Ozark,
that's one show I have not been requested for, but
Outsider. I think they shot that there.
yes, a
The
couple of
Outsider.
other things, but it's not. When the Vampire Diaries were still on, I got a lot for that. The originals, those kinds of things. But now, this is the bummer. They're not reaching, especially with what's happening now with COVID-19 and all this stuff. Now they're really not going to be reaching out at the state. Everybody's going to be focused on local talent because out of have to,
Right.
So that's another bummer.
Wow. We're going through a lot of stuff right here with your damn career now. So all three kids are getting out.
Yeah.
Are you going to be doing any writing or producing or any of your own personal projects?
Well, I actually very recently, I'm trying to find a co-writer. I'm not a writer, but I have a script idea that I've been really desirous of bringing to fruition, and it'd be my first experience doing so. It's about the education system. So I'm actually currently just starting to look for some help on that. I have a bare bones idea and just kind of want to get that going, but I need some help.
Give people an idea of some of the stuff that you've done, so if they want to research you or see some of your work, let's get into that real quick. We don't need to list 100 commercials.
No. But the nice thing is I've only done a couple of independent films that I'm really proud of, and then my TV series for Nickelodeon. So,
what was that show on Nickelodeon that you did?
It was called Every Which Way, and it was a kid's kind of a telenovela. I played the mother of the two main characters for the final season, and it was really fun. I did 13 episodes out of 22, and I met some really amazing people. It was very interesting.
Where'd you shoot that? In Georgia?
In Miami. No.
Oh, you shot that in Miami.
Yeah, it was shot in Miami and in Doral in North Miami. Yeah.
Holy cow! I didn't know that. Just what was a couple commercials recently I saw you in? What were they?
I have a Credit Sesame one that should still be running. I did a Credit Karma. I did an Oscar Mayer. I've done a bunch of local stuff for roofing companies and air conditioning companies, and a lot for Florida Hospital, which is now Advent Health. God, all kinds of stuff. Parliament roofing, done some stuff for Channel 6, lots of little things.
Yeah, well, I mean, anybody in Orlando, I think at this point kind of knows you in that game. And you're one of the last Mohicans that stuck around with this stuff.
Yeah, not for long.
When do you plan on leaving? And you're going to go to Georgia, you're saying?
Well,
Most likely? You're not going to, that's where you plan on?
Yeah. But like I said, my son's leaving me for college. He's going to be in Chicago, and my baby will graduate next June. So as soon as that happens, we'll kind of revisit, and by next August, we'll know what we're going to do.
And your son, he's involved with the arts.
Musical theater, yes.
Right. What's his after he graduates, hypothetically?
He's my triple threat. He's a Broadway wannabe. He's a tapper. He wants
to do New York, right? Most likely?
Yeah, he most likely will go to New York. But again, with everything as it is, we don't know. He may stay in Chicago, too, which has a wonderful theater community.
Oh, my God. I grew up around that. Yeah. And you know who else does? Cleveland. Ohio's got a great theater.
Yeah.
You know.
His other top school choice was Baldwin Wallace, and he was waitlisted there, but we wound up going with Roosevelt. So. And
your other two daughters, are they involved with that at all? I only know your son being involved with the arts, right?
Any interest? Not at all.
All righty. Well, thank you for being on here. I think we got a really good backstory about you. I always want to have a podcast where it's not just a pitch about what you're doing currently, right? It's about finding out about things that people may have never knew about you. And that's it's for selfish reasons, to be honest. You know what I mean? I knew some about your backstory, but I didn't know all of it. And then people too have to, I think, understand how, I think a lot of people think with acting or actors or just in general that they live a certain type of lifestyle, that it's actually not the reality. It's not, they don't realize how much rejection they deal with, the struggle, the financial struggles, balancing families. They kind of just see things as people going to the Emmys or the Oscars or all that type of bullshit. And they don't realize how hard
one thing I'd like to leave any audience member with is, I heard this very recently. A woman I admire very much, she's an author and an actress, Glennon Doyle, had said something to the effect of, when she was going through her life changes and her divorce, and she was braiding her daughter's hair, and she thought to herself, I'm staying in this marriage for her, but would I want this marriage for her? Right. And it's about, you hear people, oh, it's selfish to want to do things like that, or it's selfish to want to follow your dreams and not do for your kid. No, it's selfish to not follow your dreams.
Absolutely.
It's selfish to hold yourself back and not model for your children what they can achieve. As I said, I'm not a movie star. That's not my goal. But have I accomplished what I'm proud of? Yes. Have I been able to make a semblance of a living? Yes. And not a lot of people can say that. And it's not easy. You don't just decide, I'm going to be an actor and book commercial. I mean, that doesn't happen. The days of Schwab's drugstore don't exist anymore. It takes a ton of work, and there's a whole business behind it. And that's a whole nother podcast.
Oh, of course.
And having been both in casting and in front of the camera, I see so much, and it's just amazing to me.
Yeah, I always talked about when I was with my daughter and she was sick, she was having a liver transplant. My dream was to always go make movies, and I never did it. I was going at 30 years old, and I used to look at her and say, I don't know what the future for her holds, but I had all the opportunities to at least go for it or try. Even if I failed, she may not even get those opportunities, depending on how things work out. Mm-hmm. So I always look at life too, and my daughters, I tell them, like, you got to just start. And I believe, I don't care if it's a book, I don't care if it's a movie, just start the process. But I always wanted my kids, if I passed away at any time, to say, hey, my pops went for it. He may have not always succeeded. He may not have won an Oscar hypothetically, or went to do this or that, or was a best-selling author. I didn't even give a shit about any of that. I just wanted to enjoy the journey, but also not only my kids, but I have so many other relatives, friends, colleagues that I wanted to say, hey, I'm trying it. I'm going for it. And so can you. It's really, I'm not saying I'm setting a tone for everybody by any means, but if people do see you going after certain things, it kind of boosts them, I think, a lot of times. It kind of show them they can do it as well.
You have to start at the bottom rung of the ladder to get to the top rung, right? So a goal should not just be that goal. It should be the 30, 40, 100 other little goals that you have to achieve before you can get to that main goal. It's, you don't just climb Machu Picchu. You have to start at the base.
Yeah, and it's handling rejection. I think in this industry, as you well know, life's all about being rejected. It's a no, and you make it a, next type scenario, because you're dealing with.
I like to say that no is new opportunity.
Yeah. And you hear all these things. All it takes is one person to discover you, or all it takes is one this or one that. Forget that. By the time how do I say it? Like, people are thinking, the discovery aspect. No, you're going to work your ass off, not only for years, maybe even decades, to maybe get to where you need to be. And you just got to enjoy the journey along the way. But the rejections, you have to understand. You got to be a little nuts, truthfully. Because most people can't handle being rejected by anything. In the industry that me and you chose, or that I chose for a while, all I dealt with was rejection. I don't care if it was an email, a phone call, trying to raise funding, trying to get certain actors, trying to get anything on a high level. All I dealt with was rejection. So it makes you who you are. You know what I mean? And then before you know it, you find yourself in a position where you're rejecting others. You don't even realize it a lot of times. You're being in the industry. All of a sudden, I'm casting a film. Now I'm rejecting hundreds of actors. And I was like, wow, now I'm on the other side of this. So you also learn not only how it feels to get rejected, but on the flip side, now you have to reject others. Because, as well as I do, you can't have everybody be a part of your production or what you're doing. So
no, you have to fail forward, period. And if you can't, you have to fail forward. You have to. If you don't fail, what do you learn?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the journey along the way. Every time, even at the end of a film I made or whatever I've done, I don't care if I'm at my premiere or whatever, then it's over. I'm like, then it's over. It's actually when I'm going along the journey is where I love it the most. It's not when everybody looks at the end, like I can't wait till this ends. I used to look at it and go, God, I hope it never ends. And I think sometimes I would drag my production out or all these things because I wanted to keep extending it, right? So, because once it's gone, it's gone. And then you got to take on another endeavor, which is another mountain to climb. But yeah, you know that as well. So, well, that's it. I gave you the beach. That's it. You got to go to my cousin's place out there. He still has the place.
I know. I want to see if it's available. I need to get the heck out.
It's a nice place over there. Yeah, go out there. He's a good guy. I love my cousin Louis. I very seldom see him though. Just two different type of lifestyles. But I did get to see him at a car show not long ago with my father. So he came by. So that was cool.
Nice.
All righty. Well, what else you got? You got anything else to say?
Not really. Just, I think if I can finish with something, the old poem, The Dash, it's not about the beginning or the end. It's what's in the middle. So live every day as, to the best of your ability and enjoy.
That's it. Well, give your son my best and your kids and your boyfriend and everybody.
Thank you.
All righty. And then I'll post this and we'll get crazy. I'll let you know when I'm going to do it.
Yay. Take care.
All right. Take care, my dear.
Bye.
See you later.